Okay, so I repeat, Plato and Socrates believe in something called a priori knowledge. That is knowledge that is independent of experience. They believe that there is some animating principle that exists within us. It is immaterial. It predates birth. It persists after death. It goes through repeated incarnations. And it comes to possess a knowledge no single person could have. With the death of the body, the soul is liberated and has an opportunity to gain pure knowledge. Now, Menon, as you can imagine, is a little confused here by Socrates' reply. And he said, Socrates, can you show me what you mean by this? That knowledge is independent of experience, that the soul knows these things. Can you prove that? And Socrates says, okay. And what he does, he calls over Meno's servant boy, who was a slave. He is uneducated. He has no knowledge of math or geometry. And Socrates says, I'm going to get this boy to solve a problem. And he says this, and he draws this figure in the sand. He says, if you have a square that has 2-foot sides, the area that it encloses is what we call 4. The area of that square is 4. And so now he asks the boy, how long do the sides need to be for the area to be 8? Well, if it was 2-foot sides and the area was 4, the boy immediately thinks, okay, it'd be 4-foot sides. You just double it. You're doubling the area, you just double the sides, and he answers and he says, it would be 8. And Socrates says no. And he begins to draw diagrams in the dirt or sand. And he questions the boy step by step. This is Socrates' program now. This is question and answer. And through this process, the boy comes to know that the area of a square is determined by the length of a diagonal that is drawn through it. And he solves the problem and gives the answer. The boy never studied geometry. Socrates did not give him the answer. How did he know the solution then? Socrates says he always knew. And under proper guidance, he remembered it. And so we are back to our statement here. That Socrates and Plato believe that knowledge is remembering. And what we have here is an answer to the sophists, who claim there's no such thing as unchanging truth. And the first answer to that we get is the truths of mathematics. So let me go back to my statement when I said that there are 17, well, let me come back just a second. Mathematics tells us 4 times 4 is 16. All right. Was that true 500 years ago? Yes. Will it be true 500 years from now? Yes. So there is universal, we've discovered an area where there is universal truth. That would be the truth of mathematics. And now let me go back to my statement that there are 17 people in this room. Once again, assuming that we were in here in the auditorium and have a class. And we determined that in order to verify that, we had to verify that by experience. We had to count. Okay? Well, now listen to this. If I say 17 is more than 12, now as soon as I said that, did you know that was true? Yes. It didn't take experience. You didn't have to count. You knew that automatically, and you knew that with certainty. So the point that they make is we don't come up with mathematical truths through experience or through observation. Take something like pi, which is needed to calculate the circumference of a circle there. The Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared for a right triangle. These things will not come up with experience. You don't see a right triangle somewhere and determine that. And so these ideas have to exist independent of experience. That means that they exist a priori. They exist independent of experience. And Plato will broaden this search to include the kinds of truths that will match up with mathematical certainties. But if experience doesn't yield such truths, how do you conduct this search? And the answer is, again, with dialectic, the Socratic method, question and answer method, and we add something here now. I told you when that Socrates' method of teaching was question and answer, and I said we're going to add something to that. I'm going to do that right now. And the purpose of question and answer from Socrates is to draw out a priori knowledge. And it takes the guidance of a philosopher to do this. We have to get past the world of our senses. We must get to the truths possessed by the soul at birth. So Socrates' solution to the problem of knowledge is that we must get past our reliance on the world of the senses. This is a radical program of his. Now let's come back to our question. Can virtue be taught? Okay, that's where we started this dialogue with. Socrates finally admits, no, not as things stand now. And he says that's because we haven't discovered what virtue is. We have to come to know virtue and establish that as a truth, and then it can be taught. And that's the purpose of philosophy. That is what allows us to know things with certainty. Now, and I'll give you an interesting question that Menon raised. He says, well, now, wait a minute, Socrates. I know people who are virtuous. Okay, are you telling me they don't know what virtue is? And Socrates says, yes, I am telling you that. They do not know and are not able to define accurately virtue. They can act virtuously, but they can't even teach virtue to their children because they don't have it and they have not made it a knowledge. And he says, that's what we're trying to do, and I will give you now. And Socrates says there is a difference between correct opinion. This would be these people who are able to act virtuously. They have correct opinion, and they are virtuous people, but they don't have knowledge of what virtue is, so they can't teach it. They can't even teach it to their children. I give an example often of this. I sponsored the chess club here at the school, and if you knew a little bit about playing chess, and I sat you down at the chessboard and gave you a king and a rook, now you'd have to know some chess to follow this, and I have a king, and I said, all right, your move, can you checkmate me? And you're not sure how to do that. You move around and you move around and you move around, and finally, it can be done, and finally, you put me in checkmate. And I say, good. Now I ask you, tell me how you did that. Well, you wouldn't know. Okay, it just happened. In other words, what you would have had was correct opinion. And I could take you and sit you down, and in about 10 minutes, I could teach you how to do that, how to checkmate with a king and a rook against just a king. And I could teach you how to do that with certainty, and then it would be knowledge that you had. You could explain it to someone else. You could do it every single time over and over again. That's the point that Socrates will make here about the fact, yes, there are people who have virtue, but they don't know what it is. And so they cannot teach it. And again, they can't even teach it to their own children. And so what Socrates says is that we have to come to know what virtue is. That's the purpose of philosophy. It allows us to know things with certainty. And Socrates says once virtue is a knowledge, then it can be taught. And so our question here, can virtue be taught? Socrates has to say, no, not as things are right now, because we have not defined virtue. We have not made it a knowledge. Once we can make it a knowledge, something we have certain knowledge of, then we can teach it. and it can be taught. And again, that is the purpose of philosophy, is to come to know things with a type of certainty where it can then be understood and taught.